My wife ended our 17-year marriage with a 4-line email and took everything I owned except the part of me she didn't know existed. No warning, no call, just 4 lines. And when I opened it 5,000 miles from home in a war zone, I realized she'd already moved her boyfriend into my bed. But she made one mistake. She thought I was just a soldier. She didn't see the investments, the backup plans, the favors I'd stacked like dominoes, waiting. By the time she realized it, it was already too late. I met her when I was nothing. Not poor, not rich, just invisible. I was a tired college kid juggling night shifts and textbooks, barely keeping the lights on. She walked into my life like something out of a movie, self-assured, sharp, radiant. She liked that I was driven. I liked that she believed in me. Back then, we didn't have anything. Our first apartment had cockroaches, our mattress was on the floor. We shared a $5 meal and called it a celebration. But she made life feel lighter, brighter, worth fighting for. And I fought. I joined the military to stabilize our future. She cried the first time I deployed, said she'd count the days. I believed her. I believed everything. 17 years, 3 deployments, 2 miscarriages, 1 little dog named Pepper, a life built brick by brick. And then, one morning, I opened my email in the middle of a humid base in the Middle East. I'd just finished patrol, my boots were still muddy, my hands were still shaking from adrenaline, and there it was. No subject. I'm done. I moved out. I cleaned the account. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Just like that. 4 sentences. Cold, surgical, final. I remember staring at the screen for what felt like hours. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just blinked and then blinked again. And then I whispered to myself, understood. Not because I accepted it, but because something in me switched. The soldier in me took over. I rewound our last year like a surveillance tape. The missed calls, the perfume I didn't buy. The Sunday mornings she was at yoga, but came home without a sweat. The way she stopped asking when I'd be home. I brushed it off. I trusted her. That's what you do when you're building a life with someone. But she'd made her move now. She emptied our joint account down to the last cent. She disconnected the home security app so I couldn't see who was coming or going. I checked the app out of habit. No device connected. I stared at the message. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a husband. I felt like a ghost. And worst of all, she changed the locks. I wasn't just betrayed, I was erased. But here's the part she didn't see coming. I had a folder. There was something she didn't know. Let's just say I'd kept receipts. A digital vault, buried in cloud storage, under 3 layers of encryption. It wasn't just a folder, it was a time capsule. Investment logs, names, copies of deeds, passwords to accounts she never even knew existed. While she thought I was just a soldier, I'd been building something far more dangerous. Leverage. And I was about to use it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of rage, not because of heartbreak, but because my brain flipped into mission mode. You see, war teaches you something funny. It teaches you to detach, to think in silence, to wait. And that night, I waited and planned. While the others snored in their bunks, I was scanning everything she ever texted me. Emails, calendars, notes on the fridge, her spending habits, the sudden Starbucks charges 2 towns over, the hotel receipts buried in our shared email. She thought she was clever. She wasn't. She left a trail of digital breadcrumbs so thick, a blind man could follow them. Turns out she'd been seeing him for over a year. Not just seeing, traveling, hotels, dinner reservations. She even used my frequent flyer miles once. But this wasn't about him. I didn't care about him. This was about her, about the person I trusted enough to leave my life in her hands while I wore a uniform. So I went to work. I contacted my bank first, explained the situation, calmly. I knew the manager had helped his son get into ROTC. I didn't ask for anything illegal, just flagged the account activity. Legally, she was allowed to withdraw, but if the transfer was fraudulent or deceptive, I could challenge it later. Next, I accessed my private investment account, the one in my name only. She didn't know about it because I never told her, not out of secrecy, just self-preservation. It had started small, $200 a month from deployment bonuses, then $500, then $1,000. Over the years it grew. Stocks, index funds, a little real estate REIT, nothing flashy, nothing she could track. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to make moves. I contacted a lawyer, A woman named Diana I'd met at a veterans legal event. She'd handled divorces before ugly ones. I told her everything. She listened, and then she said 6 words that gave me the first taste of peace I'd felt in days. She has no idea what's coming. We drafted a plan. We wouldn't respond to the lawyer she'd hired. Not yet. Let them think I was weak, distracted, maybe even shattered. I'd play dead. I'd let her move forward, get comfortable, think she'd won. Because the best counterattacks, they come when your enemy is celebrating. I started logging everything. She moved into the house. Great, now she's liable for all maintenance. She disconnected the alarm system. Perfect. Voids insurance protections. She's living with another man. Even better, adultery still counts in our state. Every move she made gave me more ammo. But the most important move I made was the quietest. 3 years ago, I had bought a plot of land. Remote, forest-lined, cash purchase, no mortgage, no paper trail connecting her. I'd been planning to build a cabin someday. Now, it became my extraction point. My place to regroup, to breathe, to rebuild, and eventually, to rise. I didn't tell a soul. Not my parents, not my sister, not even my best friend from deployment. The moment you speak it out loud, it becomes real. And I wasn't ready to hand her that power. I wanted silence. Not the silence of defeat. The silence of planning, of precision. She thought she was free. She started posting again. New hair, new nails, champagne glasses. Quotes like new beginnings, and sometimes letting go is growth. She even soft-launched him. Not directly, but a blurry hand in a photo, 2 drinks at a bar, matching sneakers in a gym mirror. I didn't need confirmation. The look in her eyes was enough. She wasn't hiding, she was bragging, and I watched. I bookmarked. I screen recorded. Every reel, every story, every caption that could later serve as proof. But what hurt most? She had Pepper, our dog, the one who waited by the door every time I left, the one who whimpered when she couldn't find my boots. Now he was sleeping at the feet of some stranger in my house. It made my chest tight, but I reminded myself, this wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to send angry texts. That's what she wanted. She wanted chaos, so she could paint herself as the victim, the poor wife of a broken soldier. No, she'd get none of that from me. What she would get was the mirror she refused to look into. It started with the utilities. I had opened them under my name years ago: electricity, water, internet. I hadn't thought about it since. The lights went out first, then the Wi-Fi, then the water. I wasn't cruel. I gave her time. A 2-week grace period with polite emails from the companies. I just didn't forward them. When she called me, it wasn't to apologize. It was to yell. Why the hell is the power out? Why is there no internet?
Do you even care what I'm going through?
I let her speak. I said 5 words. Please speak to your lawyer. And then I hung up. She called again, and again, and again. I never blocked her, but I never picked up either. Every missed call was a reminder. You chose this. The next week, I pulled the insurance records. The home, the car, the valuables, all under my name. She thought transferring the house's title would be easy, but I had placed a clause in the mortgage protection years ago. Both spouses must be present for any transfer. Without my signature, the house was legally locked, and since she was cohabiting with another man in a home still under my insurance, I had grounds for immediate policy cancellation. Her new life started to crack. And just when I thought I might be close to done, her lawyer made a mistake. They sent over a financial disclosure request, standard procedure. But in the attachments they listed her new partner, his name, his address, his employment. And that's when everything changed. Because I knew that name, and I knew exactly where he worked. And just like that, I had leverage. Not against him, against her, because what she didn't know was that the man she'd left me for was married too. And his wife. She wasn't nearly as quiet as I was. I had to triple-check the name, but there it was, in black and white. Brian Whitmore. Mid-level marketing exec, married, 2 kids, lives in a suburb just 20 minutes from our old place. And his wife? Her name was Melissa. I found her Facebook page in under 5 minutes. She hadn't posted much recently, a few photos of her kids, a selfie in a bookstore. Nothing about Brian, nothing about being strong or healing, which told me everything I needed to know. She didn't know. Yet, that night, I didn't sleep again. Not because I was obsessing, but because I had to make a decision. Revenge is a funny thing. It tempts you to burn every bridge, shatter every life in the blast radius. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was exposure. I didn't want Melissa to suffer. But she deserved to know. She deserved truth, the kind my wife had stolen from me with 4 sentences and a lawyer's number. So I drafted a letter. Not angry, not vulgar, just honest. I told her everything. How long it had been going on. The hotels, the flights, the dinners, the photos, the time-stamped evidence. Screenshots, logs, a picture of my dog sleeping on Brian's lap. I left out anything personal. I didn't mention my own pain. This wasn't about me. It was about giving her a choice, the one I never got. I printed the letter, placed it in a plain white envelope, and mailed it certified to her home. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 5 days later, Brian vanished from my wife's social media. The gym selfies stopped, the champagne brunches disappeared. Her stories went from new beginnings to quiet time for healing. She didn't know I'd sent the letter, but she knew something had changed. 2 weeks after that, I got a message from a blocked number. "You think you've won? You're pathetic. Enjoy your cabin, loser." That was the moment I knew the mask had finally cracked. She wasn't in control anymore. She was flailing. Good, because I was just getting started. I told my lawyer to proceed. We filed our response with full documentation. Her financial records, her social posts, her cohabitation proof, her partner's legal status, her asset transfers. My lawyer smiled when she saw the file. "This is surgical. She's going to panic." And panic. She did. Her lawyer tried to offer a private settlement. I declined. I wanted court. I wanted everything on record. Because this wasn't just about justice for me. It was about setting fire to the false image she'd built, the narrative where she was the brave, independent woman rebuilding after a toxic marriage. No, not today. Not with the truth stacked and labeled in front of a judge. And when the court date came, she didn't show up. Instead, she sent a statement, thin, defensive, full of holes. My lawyer shredded it. I watched the judge flip through the documents. I saw his eyes pause on the photos, the dates, the proof. And then I heard the sentence I'd been waiting for. The court rules in favor of the respondent. We had both lost something we couldn't get back. I just walked out quietly, not victorious, just free. It wasn't a movie ending. There was no applause, no music. Just me, in a cheap suit, walking down stone steps in the cold. But inside, something had finally settled. The storm was gone. She tried to reach out a week later. Another blocked number, another message. "This is what you wanted, right? I hope you're happy. You ruined everything." I didn't reply, because I wasn't happy. Not in the way she meant. I didn't want her ruined. I wanted her revealed. I wanted her to see the reflection she'd been hiding from. And now, she had to live with it. As for me, I packed what little I had and drove out to the cabin. It wasn't much, a skeleton of a home, walls unfinished, no insulation. But it was mine. Every board, every nail, paid for in full. It was quiet out there. No sirens, no phones buzzing. Just wind through the trees and the creak of old wood. The first night, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a beer. Stared at the stars. No TV, no distractions, just air. And then I cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just soft. For everything I'd lost. For the version of her I'd believed in. For the man I had to become to survive her. But also, for the man I still was. Someone who could love. Someone who didn't break, even when everything around him did. The next morning, I woke up with purpose. I started building. Literally, I cut wood, repaired the windows, installed a new stove. Each task was a meditation, and as the days passed, I started smiling again. A month in, I adopted a new dog. Not to replace Pepper. No dog could. But this one needed a home, and so did I. His name's Diesel. He snores louder than a chainsaw, and he follows me everywhere. We take long walks through the trees. He listens better than most humans, and he doesn't care about the past, only the now. I started writing again too. Just little things, notes, stories, letters I'd never send. Things I'd forgotten I loved before the uniform, before the betrayal. Funny thing is, people started finding me. Neighbors, hikers, a retired mechanic named Joe who helped me wire the generator. No one asked about her. They just saw a guy trying to start over. And little by little, I did. I sold the house, the old one, the one she fought to keep. Turns out she couldn't afford the taxes. She lost it 6 months after the ruling. I bought it at auction, and then I donated it to a non-profit for veteran families. I never told anyone, not even my lawyer. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about purpose and letting go. A few months passed. No lawyers, no phone calls, no sudden emails with subject lines like grenades. Just the rhythm of my own breath, the smell of pine, and Diesel's tail thumping against the floor. The cabin became a home. I hung shelves, built a fireplace, found a local woodworker who helped me craft a kitchen table from a fallen oak out back. It wasn't polished, it wasn't symmetrical, but it was mine. Every scratch and groove told a story, not of pain, but of survival. I found new routines. Mornings started with coffee and quiet. Afternoons were for working with my hands, fixing, improving, learning things YouTube never taught. Evenings, I read. I hadn't opened a book in years. Deployment had taken that from me. But now, I devoured stories like oxygen. Sometimes I laughed out loud. Other times, I sat in silence after the last page, thinking about people who never existed and how much they felt like me. And slowly, the memories of her began to soften. Not disappear, not forgive, but soften. I stopped checking her socials. I stopped caring if she'd moved in with someone new or if Brian had come crawling back. It wasn't my life anymore. She had cut the thread, and I wasn't going to tie it back. One morning, I found an old voice message saved to my email drafts. It was from her years ago, before things broke. She was laughing, telling me to come home safe, saying she missed me and that Pepper was snoring on her lap. I listened to it once, just once, and then I deleted it, because that version of her, she existed. But she was gone now. Grief is strange. It doesn't come all at once. It leaks through cracks on birthdays, in the smell of her old perfume, in the way Diesel tilts his head when I put on boots. But it gets easier. Not because you forget, but because you learn to carry it better. Eventually, I started volunteering. A local youth center was looking for mentors, especially for teens whose parents were incarcerated or deployed. At first, I just helped fix broken furniture. Then they asked me to speak. Then one kid, Marcus, asked if I could help him build a bike rack. 3 weeks later, we were rebuilding the whole garage together. He didn't ask about my past. He just showed up, same time every week, with his headphones around his neck and a bag of chips for Diesel. I never told him about the divorce. But one day he looked up from the drill and said, "You seem like someone who's been through stuff. But you don't act broken. That's cool." That hit harder than any court ruling ever could, because he didn't see the soldier. He didn't see the man whose wife emptied his life with 4 sentences. He saw a builder, a steady hand, someone still standing. Winter came early that year. The trees turned to bone. The roof creaked at night like it was remembering something. Diesel hated the cold. He'd bury himself in blankets like a burrito with paws. And every morning, I'd make us both oatmeal, his one and you under the scoop of peanut butter, mine with silence and cinnamon. There was a peace to the isolation. Not loneliness, just space. Space to finally hear myself think. I started journaling again. Not out of discipline, but because thoughts no longer felt like enemies. There was no one to prove anything to, no one to impress, no one to save, only me, and that was enough. But life, in its strange way, has a sense of timing. One snowy afternoon, I got a letter, not a bill, not an ad, an actual, handwritten letter. The envelope had no return address, just my name, full name, in her handwriting. I stood there for a long time before opening it. Inside were 2 pages. No perfume, no lipstick, just ink and regret. I didn't know how to say it, so I didn't. I thought if I could just vanish, it would hurt less for both of us. But it didn't. Every time I laughed, I wondered if you'd hear it. Every night I tried to sleep, I thought of you not sleeping out there, alone in sandstorms and sirens. I messed up. I know that, and I'm not asking you to forget it, or even forgive it. I don't know. I saw a photo of you with that dog. You looked okay, like you found something worth waking up for again. And I guess I just wanted to say, I hope you stay okay. I hope you find someone who gives you back the parts of yourself I broke. I didn't cry. I didn't burn the letter. I folded it neatly and slid it into a drawer I rarely open, not because I needed to remember, but because I needed to honor what was true once. Some things don't need closure. Some endings are just endings. And in their silence, we find room to begin. That week, I started designing again. I had studied architecture in college, way before I joined the service. Drafting floor plans used to be my therapy. I dusted off my old tools, bought some graph paper, and let the pencil do what it wanted. I designed a new cabin, smaller, warmer, with wide windows and a porch built for 2 rocking chairs, not one. Not because I needed someone, but because, for the first time, I felt open to the possibility of someone, someday, and that was new. That was healing. Because healing isn't loud. It doesn't make announcements or dramatic returns. It just shows up one morning, subtle as steam on your coffee cup. And you realize you're okay, not fixed, not the same, but okay. Spring didn't arrive all at once. It came in whispers. A warmer breeze through the cracked windows. The first green tips poking through last year's frost. Birdsong, hesitant, like they were testing if it was safe to return. I felt the same way. Cautious, curious, no longer waiting for pain, but no longer chasing it either. One afternoon, I drove into town, just to walk, not for groceries, not for errands, just to be around life. Laughter spilling out of cafes, kids dragging muddy sneakers across the pavement, old couples holding hands like the world hadn't changed. I stopped at a bookstore, not because I needed anything, but because the window display caught my eye. Stories that remind us we're still here. Inside, it smelled like wood and ink. I wandered aimlessly until a woman behind the counter looked up and smiled. Not flirtatious, not forced, just kind. "You look like someone who reads with a pencil." I blinked. She laughed. "You've got that margin notes face." I chuckled, the first real one in a long time. She recommended a memoir. I bought it. We talked about dogs. Hers was named Luna. She hated peanut butter, loved thunderstorms. I left without asking her name, but something in me shifted. Not big, not loud, just a click, like a door unlocking from the inside. That night, I sat at my old table with Diesel at my feet and flipped through the book. On page 47, the author wrote, "Grief isn't the absence of love, it's the evidence that it was real." I read that sentence 4 times, and I underlined it, pencil in hand, margin notes and all. Later that week, I got an email from the nonprofit I'd donated the house to. They wanted to invite me to a small gathering to show appreciation. They said the family living there now was thriving. A mother and her 2 sons. One of the boys had planted a garden in the backyard. They sent me a photo, tulips, tomatoes, tiny hands covered in dirt. I stared at it for a long time, not with sadness, not even pride, just stillness. She fought to keep that house, weaponized it in court, made it a symbol of control. And now it was a garden, a fresh start, a place where laughter replaced cold silence. That was enough. I never responded to the letter she sent me, never replied to the last text, never reached out again. Not because I hated her, but because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away quietly and keep walking. 1 year later, the cabin looks different now. Not newer, just lived in. The kind of lived in that smells like cedar and coffee and rain-soaked boots. The kind that holds warmth in the corners, even when the fire's out. Diesel's a little older. He's got a silver streak above one eye now, and he's lazier in the mornings. But he still waits by the door whenever I grab my keys, just in case there's an adventure. I take fewer photos these days, not because I'm not grateful, but because I don't feel the need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I started writing a book, not to publish, just to remember. Not about her, about me, about the man who once thought life was a single straight road, and then discovered the side trails mattered more. Sometimes at night, I sit on the porch and think about the life I used to have, the nights I spent waiting for messages that never came, the way betrayal felt like drowning in silence. And I wonder, would I do it all again? Would I fall in love with the same woman, build the same life, let it all burn to the ground just to rise from the ashes? I think I would. Not because she deserved it, but because I became someone I respect. And that version of me only exists because of the fire. One afternoon, a letter came in the mail, this time with a return address. Not hers. Marcus, the kid from the youth center. Inside was a photo. He'd built a bike rack, not just for himself, for the whole center. It was painted blue, with little flames on the side. Diesel was in the background, licking his hand. The note was short. Thanks for showing me how to build something that lasts. And for not giving up on me or yourself. P.S. I still owe you a bag of chips. I smiled. That night, I added a new entry to my journal. I didn't write about pain, or loss, or betrayal. I wrote about tulip, and laughter, and second chances. Because revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about choosing to live better, louder, kinder, than the people who tried to break you. And sometimes, the best revenge is a quiet life, one that doesn't need to be explained, one that just is. Full. Earth. Unapologetically yours.